When I was looking through my journal as I reflected on this past semester, I stumbled upon something that really stuck out to me. This 2-page spread discusses what keeps me from being creative or reaching my creative potential. Out of the 5 that I wrote down, there was one in particular that really made me realize that I had developed in creativity this semester. Afraid to take risks. Throughout most of my life, I have perceived creativity as a double-edged sword. I love being creative, but I am often afraid to take risks. I would just roll with the motions and I would hope to get a good grade on whatever creative tasks I had to do. When I get stuck, I have realized that it's best to try something new and not be afraid of that new idea. For example, I was going to have just text and music for this video, but the video ended up being 7 minutes long, so I decided to record myself talking to cut down on time. All of this really connects with the little book of talent. Tip 49 states, "When you get stuck, make a shift." The key quote for me in this section states, "When it comes to developing talent, autopilot is the enemy because it creates plateaus." End quote. All of this also made me think about my daycare job and the 2 lessons for this class. At my daycare job, I work with 14 students between the ages of 5 through 10, and they are all bused to the daycare right after school. We usually go outside and play games on the playground, but obviously weather gets in the way of that sometimes. So on those days, I create obstacle courses from limited materials when the students arrive. They love this because they get to be active right away after being in school for 6.5 to 7 hours. What I could do is create the same obstacle course every time, which I actually did in the beginning. Then I realized it wasn't really fun for me to create the same thing over and over again, even though it was easier. So I started creating all sorts of crazy routes and different tasks for students to do during the obstacle course. Not only do students like this more, but I also liked being challenged instead of being stuck creating the same course every single time. I wish I could get video of my students doing one of the courses, but I could not because of the issues of confidentiality. When I was planning my in-class lesson, I had a whole lesson thought of, but it was safe and not very exciting for me. Instead of sticking to what I had, I instead scrapped the whole thing and redid the lesson while being more ambitious. Having elementary students listen to jazz music for a lesson sounds absurd, but putting them out of their comfort zone allowed them to focus more on the connection of the music to the book rather than thinking about where they had heard the song before. The same thing happened with my field lesson. I had an idea to connect shapes to music. I had a lesson and then scrapped it because I couldn't connect the two at all. So I switched to visual arts and I had students create 3D models out of everyday items like marshmallows, toothpicks, Play-Doh, pipe cleaners, etc. Again, first graders making models sounds like a disaster waiting to happen, but it paid off in the end. Through this class and personal growth in other areas, I feel less nervous to take risks in my creative process, and when that process is not going well, I change things so that the product in the end is better.